It's so rare on the internet these days to see something that shouldn't really be there. Growing up, we were surrounded by creepypastas, random Unreal Engine games on random websites, and that is something magical that is not around currently. Something that shouldn't be interacted with, as if it was let there by mistake. In the past year, I added a game to my wishlist on Steam, simply called Eclipsium. I played the demo, had a great time, simply forgotten about it. It was only recently that I found out that a game actually had released. It is that I produced to you the Horror Games 2025 Eclipsium, which is a game like it feels it shouldn't be played. From its art style to its atmosphere to its general gameplay, everything feels gross and unusual, but somehow intriguing. It is, I played with no expectations whatsoever and was blown away way further than I thought I could ever potentially be. It has easily become my top 5 games of all time. So much so, I was able to reach out to one of the developers on the game just to get some comments here and there to try and actually break down what the story of this is. You've either come here because you've just completed it and have zero clue what you've just experienced, and I'm here to try and help you get that through, or you've simply seen a couple clips and want to try and understand what it potentially could be, and I urge you, buy the game. Eclipsium, I'm often seeing, is compared a lot to PlayStation 1 horror, but I am under the assumption that is more the design choice of itself, that old polygon art style that you get typical with the PlayStation 1 games. However, I am more inclined to state it is of the early PC cinematic design. I'm going to put some Fallout on screen for you, and somewhat similar here. This post-apocalyptic vibe mixed in with this odd art style really can show you don't need the most amazing graphics or the most devastating graphics card to be able to play the most intense of horror games. The game itself dubs itself as a walking simulator, which, as an illustrious tag as that might sound, it really does drive the point home to you. This is a slow, psychological horror game, and that is perfectly fine. Some reviews I saw initially had people saying that they wish there was just a faster way to get through the game, but I completely dismiss these reviews. Eclipsium works off a multitude of amazing story-building elements, atmospheric design, sound design, to keep you immersed. And it does all of this without landing a single jump scare. Eclipsium's story is half real events that you, the player, undertake, and a lot of it is also symbolism. And that symbolism comes in the way of some body horror elements. Your hand becoming a knife, a hole appearing in your hand, a witch being burned at the stake. Something can be happening on screen in front of you, and you are sat there palpable. You're questioning what's happening in and around you. Is this meant to be something you are meant to interact with? Is this something you're just meant to sit back and enjoy? And in those moments where you are sitting back and enjoying what is happening around you, it's then that the game hits you again with this utter wave of unplayability, as if you've done something that shouldn't have happened. Your character often puts himself in harm's way, offering some self-mutilation here or there, or often throwing himself into rather unfortunate circumstances. And I think, once again, that art style helps build this unease of what you should and shouldn't be doing. And the art style plays into this fantastically. There are options in the game where maybe you should or should not be making decisions, but you feel compelled to traverse alongside that way, pushing yourself into these more gross, nasty, visceral details, which feels unnatural but still sickeningly curious to progress alongside. But on the note of that dithering, a lot of people don't seem to give it that much credit, sort of citing that the art style can be sort of a little bit ugly alongside the way, which is a completely valid criticism. I, however, on the opposite side of this, where I feel a lot of horror games opt for this intrusive darkness where your visibility is brought not more than 10 feet in front of you, leading you to that worry. Whereas the promotion of this dithering inside the game itself can offer some absolutely intense mind trickery with yourself, where you can be staring, looking at something so far away, and yet being completely unaware of what it is. However, leading your mind to have a seed of anxiety inside it, leading on to a further horror element, which I feel is more preferable than the complete lack of visibility. They do offer the option to modify this as well, which is absolutely fantastic for those who are prone to headaches for this sort of art style. And if there's one thing that this game does best on absolutely anything, and I have seen it many a times whilst reading reviews for this, it is that the music is astounding. You can be listening to very simple tracks that follow a very eloquent style that really do make you feel as if you are out traversing this unusual landscape. And then cut towards somewhere later on in the game a couple hours later, and honestly, you are rushed and your heart races as this blaring track, which is synonymously encountering itself with the sirens of this vessel, is just amazing. If there's one thing that you take away from my review here, is that I have never ever been left dumbfounded by a game's soundtrack. What convinces me that the soundtrack was written by someone with such amazing passion is that the soundtracks have then since been uploaded to places like Spotify and YouTube, and they all have soundtracks that denote what is occurring typically in the game, and each one seems to be tailored towards the circumstance, which also helps play into the story element outside the game for me. And they all host these such unusual words, something along the lines of stigmata, tea and an airstrike, deeper into greater pain, steak Tartarus. The final track simply reads, "Hi." It is such a... I'm tearing up just thinking about it. It is such an intense and emotional piece with everything around it. The music track name itself just denotes a confusion, and you feel that passion whilst playing. You really feel it. I'm going to move on because I will go round. So what about the actual gameplay itself? Some sort of walking simulator, which obviously can't seem too fun, but it traverses this obviously with the amazing atmosphere and story that you are meant to pick up through atmospheric storytelling. You come across puzzles on the way, and Eclipsium's puzzles aren't exactly anything that are brand new. To begin with, Eclipsium does give you a host of tools which you pick up alongside the game, all with very simple and basic purposes, easy to understand. It's not too hard to expect people to just pick up a tool and go off of it, and it uses these tools later on once you've become comfortable with them as well, some used in very interesting ways still. The real excitement of Eclipsium and its puzzles simply comes from what I am assuming is called here the non-Euclidean structure, as well as some very amazing camera tricks that they use later on. To make an example of this very clear, I am standing looking at a beach. I take the painting of this beach and place it within inside a colder area. Once I travel back into that beachly painting, which I can simply walk through, it is now frozen over and the environment inside has changed. This, to me, at the time, was absolutely amazing, as it is a puzzle I've not personally encountered all too much, but solving it filled me with great glee, as part of me wasn't even aware that this was at all possible with inside the game's engine, which truly had me beaming at myself and at the game's design. Even in the beginning of the game, when you are given no tools whatsoever to progress along your path, the puzzles deep down in the caverns are nice and respective, and they incorporate that fear of this atmosphere surrounding you, giving you this claustrophobic feeling and a real weight to your puzzle solving. Not just simply pass this and move on, a real worry and fear and anxiety settles in, as if what if you can't settle this puzzle by yourself? And that is consistently reminding you in your face in this all too gross manner. However, I have referred to this game as a horror game, with no jump scares, but still a horror game all the same. Eclipsium doesn't host any jump scares, something that I feel very happy about, something that I feel is quite overdone, and is easy to get a kick on. Eclipsium hosts this amazing feeling of psychological horror across the entire way. It is mixed with introspectives of body horror, where you could be doing something to your own character you don't feel quite comfortable with. You can be following along this terrible route, just wondering what is next and around the corner. Eclipsium's horror comes from its atmospheric storytelling. There are portions where absolutely nothing is occurring, you are walking quite a long and straight narrow passage, and it can still feel rather unsettling, even to the point where mid-game you are locked on with a certain entity. It will never do any harm to you, that's not the game's intention, but it is unnerving all the same and puts your heart in a consistent state of prolonged anxiety. But now I will move into spoiler territory. All this time, I have been amiss to try not show anything from inside the game, other than things that don't quite necessarily matter, or I want you to enjoy for yourself. It was to my utter surprise that with inside the friend groups that I travelled, I was actually in semi-connection with one of the developers of Eclipsium. And once I finished the game, I sent them a message and tried to just unpack what the actual story is. We began talking, and I will say thank you so much for putting up with everything on here, as with inside the context of the game and so many questions and thoughts and feelings, it can be very easy to be led astray on what the potential story could be and the implications of it. And judging by all of the articles and YouTube reviews I've already seen, it can be quite understandable to think there might be nothing at all. Or the story is so amazingly convoluted, it's impossible to decipher what the actual story is about. However, I was able to ask everything that I needed to, and maybe me and you here can discuss in the comments exactly what might the story here actually be, because I really want to know. So I asked, what is the large void in the sky that we see? The large void in the sky is the absence of a moon. I asked, who are the girls that are buried underneath the hamlet, and why do we go through some sort of anomaly to go and reach them? I was corrected and said, there's only one girl. However, I shouldn't say any more than that. Interesting. I did ask, how can we sustain so much trauma to our bodies throughout the entire game? They responded, the physical trauma to the character isn't literal, but that also extends to a lot of other things in the game. I did follow up with 3 banger questions, which I thought were quite decent. What is the purpose of the submarine? Who made the factory and who feeds it? And what were the horrible worms that permeate down in the mines? However, we were running out of time, so I was able to sneak in one last one, and I think this here is the one that creates the most questions. I said, if not any, what does the ending mean? We defeat a large snake after defending her in the end. In my head, the snake is a symbol for Eclipsium, the symbol for modern day doctors and just general medicines. This is synonymous with the actual ending of the game itself and the beginning of the game, which all takes place within a hospital room. They responded, I don't think I should outright deny or confirm story details, but I'll say you're going very much in the right direction with the last question. A lot of the story is abstracted behind the locations and journey you go on. There is an insinuation throughout the entire game, starting in a hospital room, ending in a hospital room, and time moving on, with seemingly an entity coming to the door, proposedly her coming out. It is potentially, theoretically possible that you, the player, are responsible for the curing of her's illness. Whatever that illness is yet to be largely unseen, but it is an ultimately happy feeling ending, which would mean that whatever had occurred throughout our journey was the right thing to do. The death of this snake was the right thing, as it represents something. What it represents is more realistically a form of illness. What this illness is, I can't say. This isn't my usual type of video. I usually like to put a lot of editing and straightforward into it, but I have been so taken away with the actual gameplay of Eclipsium that I have played it a good 5-6 times now by myself and have thoroughly enjoyed it. I urge you to, if not, discuss this with me in the comments, because I would love to find out so much more about this absolutely fantastic piece of art. Please go pick up the game as soon as possible, and trust me, you will love this.